Story time on how I found out I was adopted. So growing up, I felt so different from my family, and the treatment was off as well. So my mom is white and my dad is black. And my brother and sisters are all biracial, and at the time I thought I was too. My older brother and sister were both light-skinned, they had light eyes, they had curly or wavy hair, and same thing for my little sister. But she honestly looked like a white girl. I mean, if you straighten her hair, you would have thought that she was just white. And she looked more like my mom than anything. But me, on the other hand, I turned out completely different. I forgot to mention, but my dad is light-skinned as well. I was dark-skinned, I had the regular dark brown eyes, and my hair was extremely kinky. And I recently found out that I have 4B hair. And I never understood how I turned out this way, and the rest of my family was light-skinned. I don't know, I just sometimes felt like I didn't belong in the family, and I wasn't pretty enough. And I definitely sensed something was off because my grandmas and aunts and uncles treated me way different. And I could tell I wasn't their favorite. Sorry I went on a rant, but if you want to know how I found out, come back for part 2. This is part 2 on how I found out I was adopted. So, like I said earlier, I look completely different from my family. Mom's white, dad is black. Anyway, so the day I found out. So, one time in class, we were doing Punnett squares. And at the time, I was in 8th grade. We did Punnett squares with our parents, height, hair, skin, eyes, everything. But my Punnett squares weren't adding up. Like, I didn't get the traits that I'm supposed to have. So, that day after school, I showed my mom the Punnett squares. And my mom said that they weren't accurate and that the Punnett squares aren't a real thing. So I just went on with life again, just thinking that it was fake and that the Punnett square theory was wrong. Then a week later, I went back to school and showed my friends, and I told them, and they said that the Punnett squares were accurate. Then one of them laughed and said, "You must be adopted or something." And when she said that, literally my whole world clicked. Sorry, but it's literally so much to the story. You're going to have to come back for part 3 on how I even asked my parents how I was adopted or if I was adopted. So, sorry. This is part 3 on how I found out I was adopted. So one of my friends said that I must be adopted, and like for a whole month, it was just sitting on me to ask my parents if I was. I was kind of scared because I didn't want to believe that I was actually adopted, but everything was starting to add up from how I looked to how my family treated me, and it's always just been so weird. So one night we were having like a family movie night, and I started crying in the middle of the movie. My dad had paused the movie and asked what was wrong, and I finally asked what's been bothering me. Am I adopted? And my mom looked over to me, and from that look, I could just tell. A couple days later, my parents sat me down and talked about it, told me I was from Kenya, told me about my real mom, and just things that I wish I should have had known sooner. Because most of my life, I was questioning my existence. But now I'm 43 years old. I was able to find 2 sisters I had. They were both older than me, and they were also adopted. But I never got to meet my real mom because she passed away before I could meet her. But I'm glad to have met the sisters that I have.
Story time about how my mom gave me up for adoption. Y'all let me know how y'all feel about this at the end. So my mom was from the old days, and she was always taught to find a rich man. She could be the lady, blah, blah, play her part. So she did just that. Long story short, she popped up pregnant, which was me. But after I was born, my dad wanted a DNA test because he realized I looked absolutely nothing like him and did not trust. DNA test came back, and you guessed it, I was not his. My mom actually reconnected with an old friend from her childhood, and you know the rest. My mom's husband was really controlling and made her feel worthless, and the guy she reconnected with made her feel like a real person and like she was worth something. So that's why that happened. So once her husband at the time found out about all this, he gave her an ultimatum. You can stay here, stay stable, and give her up for adoption, or you can keep her, get out, and go find your own life and start from zero. Now, my mom was not educated. She never got a degree. She never had a job. She has no type of training for the real world. So she was faced with a hard decision. Take me and go struggle for years to make a way for both of us, or give me up and hopefully I get a family that knows how to take care of me properly. I don't know how to feel about this.
Story time about how my crazy friend told me that she's attracted to me and I eventually had to block her. And yeah, she's a girl. And yes, this is my own story time. Oh yeah, and by the way, my makeup collab with Au Natural dropped today, so please click the link in my bio. I am so proud of it, and it is super affordable makeup. So back in 2016, I was living in LA by myself. I was pretty much on set every single week, and I auditioned almost every day. So I was meeting tons of people and actors at that time. And I was making lots of friends. During one of these auditions, I met this girl, let's call her Jess. Jess was super cute and funny, and she made me laugh a lot. After the audition, she asked me if I wanted to share an Uber with her, which I thought was really sweet. But when we got into the Uber, she was asking me so many questions. Like, this girl wanted to know everything about me. Finally, we exchanged phone numbers, and when I got home, she sent me a text. She asked me to go out with her and her friends. I had so much work the next day, I told her no. That's when she calls me really angry, telling me that I need to live my life. You'll never guess what she said. Part 2 is up. Part 2 of how my friend told me she was attracted to me and I eventually had to block her. If you haven't heard, I dropped my first makeup collab today with Au Natural. Please click the link in my bio to shop. It's super affordable makeup and I'm so proud of it. So she calls me on the phone after I told her I didn't want to go out, and she starts yelling at me. She says that I needed to live my life. Then she said, "Give me your address, I'm coming over right now to pick you up." That's when I was honest with her and I told her that she's putting a lot of pressure on me and that I barely even know her. Then she kind of backed off because she heard my tone of voice, and she told me that she was a very intuitive person, that she could tell that I was holding something back. I told her we could hang out that weekend and she said fine. Then she proceeded to text me every single day. Really thought we were building a friendship, so we talked about a lot of stuff. And I was finally happy to have a real girlfriend. At least I thought. Finally, the weekend comes around, but I get my period. My periods are pretty bad, so I told her that I wouldn't be able to go out. Again, she calls me super angry. She said I needed to man up and basically take drugs, like the green stuff. I sort of laughed on the phone and this made her even more angry. That's when she hung up. But then she calls me right back. Part 3 is up. Part 3 of how my crazy friend told me she was attracted to me and eventually I had to block her. By the way, the blue pigment is from my collab with Au Natural, so please go click the link in bio to shop. Super affordable. So after she hung up on me, she calls me right back. That's when I told her that she was being really strange and I just didn't like it. She apologized and begged me to come out. Finally, I said yes because she was just being so annoying. So I go out with her and her friends for a few hours. Then I literally had to beg her to let me go home. Throughout the night, she kept holding my hand and kissing it. Another 2 weeks passed by and we just kept texting, but I definitely knew that I was not going to go out with her again. But of course she invites me out again. That's when I told her that I didn't really think our friendship would work out. 30 minutes later, she tells me to look out my window. Yep, she showed up to my apartment. Then she told me that I was confused, as in I didn't know if I liked men or women. I told her I definitely like guys. She told me she just wanted to take me out on one date. I asked her how she found out where I lived, and she said she followed me from the Uber that first time. I blocked her and ran inside, haven't spoken to her since.
Story time about the girl who tried to talk me into doing the nasty with her dad. Literally. So a little background information. 2 months before this whole situation, I had met her through one of my friends at a party. She was really funny, really nice. We're gonna call this girl Jessie. So when my friend and I left the party, I had asked her about Jessie, and she was like, "Oh, I wouldn't really hang around her. She's just like a really weird person." Now, I didn't really take my friend's word for it, mainly because in the past, my friend has gotten really jealous whenever I've started hanging out with other people. So I decided to find out for myself, which now I realize that was probably not one of my best ideas. So a few weeks later, we hung out with her again, and I got her number that night. Her and I started hanging out a lot. And her and I were both seniors in high school. Well, when I would go over to her house, her dad would be super weird around me. He would just be very overly nice and touchy with me. And her mom and her dad were divorced. Well, the one night I'm sitting in Jessie's room and she comes upstairs and she's like, "OMG, I have to tell you what my dad said." Like for part 2. Okay, part 2 about the girl who tried to talk me into doing the nasty with her dad. Literally. Like I said, she comes upstairs to her bedroom and she's like, "OMG, I have to tell you what my dad just said about you." And she would literally do this all the time. She would be like, "Oh, my dad just said that you're so pretty," or "My dad just said that if you were his age, he would totally date you," and just like super weird things like that. Well, I was like, "Oh, like what did he say?" And she was like, "OMG, I feel so weird telling you, like I really don't want to tell you." She was like, "I feel like you'll think he's weird." Low-key, she didn't know that I already thought that he was weird, but I was like, "Oh, okay." She was like, "Okay, fine, I'll just tell you. My dad said that he would totally fuck you." And I was like, "Oh, that's really gross. Like, he's really fucking weird for that." And she was like, No, you should totally do it." And I was like, "No, I'm good. Like, that does not make me feel comfortable." And she was like, "Dude, you don't understand. He'll pay you." And her dad was super rich, like he owned 4 of his own companies and everything. But still, that was not enough to bribe me to do it with this man. So I grabbed my stuff and I am like about to walk out of her room. And she's like, "Wait, no, don't go. Like I was just joking." And I was like, "No, I'm still gonna leave." And she was like, "No, please, please, please don't. Like, how are you gonna get home? I'm not driving you." So I start walking down the stairs and I stop and look into the living room and I see her dad laying naked on the couch, just watching the stairs. It's like he was literally waiting for me to come down here to do the nasty with him. So I start running out the door and her dad chases me and he's like, "Hey, like, where are you going? What's wrong?" And I'm like covering my eyes. I turn around and I'm like, "You're what's fucking wrong. You're so fucking gross." After that, she texted me begging me not to tell anybody, and I don't really see her anymore except for when we go to parties and she just happens to be there.
This is the story of how I lost my virginity at my college campus. And it was one of my professors that took my virginity. And this professor had a wife. Let's get right into it. This happened my freshman year in college, okay? A bitch just got there. If I'm being 100% honest, I never wanted to do the nasty because I was trying to save it for somebody special. After I graduated, baby, it was time for me to act up. And I most definitely acted up. Shit. So freshman year of college comes around. The first day of school and I walk into English class. I see this fine, sexy, tall glass of water. See this man sitting at this desk in the front of the classroom. This man was Liam Hemsworth on crack. This is Liam Hemsworth. Bitch, do the math. Class starts and he introduces himself as the professor. Like, really? I wanted this man to rail me. Anyways, as time went on, this professor and I began to become really close. Maybe a little too close. He would ask me to stay after class and we would literally just talk. It became a regular thing. We got so close that we exchanged phone numbers. So close to the point where one night he called me and invited me to his house. This is going to be part 2 of how I lost my virginity to my college professor who was married. So like I said, he calls me one night and invites me to his house. He said we were getting along really well and that he never did this to any of his other students, but since me and him created such a special bond that I was an exception. So I was like, "You're fine ass, sir, I will speed. Let me grab my keys." He gives me the address, I show up and he lets me in. We sit down and we just start talking about anything. He shows me around his house eventually. As he's showing me around his house, we get to some pictures on the wall. That's when I found out that he had a wife. Immediately no. Nothing else happened and I made an excuse to go home. He texts me and says that it sucks that I had to go home. He wishes we could have spent more time together. I told him that was most likely the last time we were going to spend together since he had a wife. Because I did give a fuck at the moment. But things changed. Finding out he was married made me so uncomfortable that I stopped answering his calls and I stopped replying to his texts. I also skipped that class for a little bit because I just felt so awkward. One day the professor sends out an email saying that there was a mandatory meeting after school. I go to that meeting, but when I show up, me and my professor are the only people there. Like for part 3. This is going to be part 4 of the time I lost my virginity by my college professor who was married. Like I said, me and my professor started taking pictures and taking videos whenever we would hook up. That would lead to our downfall. Mind you, he was the one who asked to start taking those pictures and recording those videos because he wanted it for when I wasn't around. We were doing all this and we were still walking by each other in class like nothing happened. Well, one day I'm sitting in his class as usual. Just a normal regular day. I never would have thought anything like this would have happened. But I guess it's my karma. We're sitting in class and we're learning about whatever the hell. We were going over some notes that a student had asked to go over because they didn't understand, but the professor was having a hard time trying to pull up these notes. His computer screen was connected to the big screen that all the students could see. I don't know what it's called, a smart board? Some electronic screen. It's a projector. I googled it. His computer screen is on the projector and he's opening up a bunch of documents and files. And next thing you know, he clicks a file and all the pictures and videos of me and the professor naked together shows up on the screen in front of everyone. This is going to be part 5 of the time I lost my virginity to my college professor who was married. Like I said, the professor clicks on the wrong file on his computer. All the pictures and videos of me and him hooking up showed up on the screen in front of the whole entire class. I'm sitting there like, I don't know who that is. That ain't me. It might look like me, but it ain't me. The entire class gasped all at once. It was like a harmony. And some students who sat next to me started to look at me. Like I said, I don't know who that girl that looks exactly like me on the screen is. I don't know who she is. Don't associate me with her. I don't know her. The professor's face goes red. He was frantically trying to take it off the screen. Like, it's too late. I put my hoodie up and I didn't know if I should leave the classroom or just stay in the classroom because not everybody realized that it was me. Like, some people in college don't pay attention to who's in their class. But the people that sat next to me knew that it was me. I didn't know if I should have stayed in class or if I should have left the classroom because if I left the classroom it would have looked guilty, but if I stayed in there it was just awkward. I decided to stay to avoid looking guilty. Once class was over and I went home, the entire school knew about me and the professor. This is going to be part 6 of the time I lost my virginity to my college professor who was married. So like I said, I sat through the rest of the class after those pictures and videos were shown. It just would have been way more awkward if I just walked out right away. Like, it's already awkward. Let's try to avoid the awkwardness as much as we can right now. By the time I got home, everybody knew about me and the professor. Everybody at school was talking about it. What's worse is that somebody took a picture of the screen. That was evidence, and someone sent that to his wife. A lot of people were asking me about what happened, but I didn't tell them anything because I didn't have any friends at that school and nobody deserved to know my business. I had not been in contact with the professor ever since. He had blocked my number and I tried to email him, but he wasn't answering my emails. He also stopped holding class the day after that happened. But one day he did email me back. He said from there on out to stop contacting him, and so I did. The school kind of swept everything under the rug. He did in fact get fired. The school said that if anybody reposted that picture of the screen, they would get expelled. I dropped out of college. It was definitely not worth it. So here's just a little reminder to never sleep with your college professor.